Bonjour et bienvenue dans la deuxième episode of my French Revolution vlogcast. Almost got there. Last time I looked at the social context of the French Revolution, and in this episode I just want to consider briefly the role of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette in creating the context for the French Revolution. Sometimes they're seen as causes of the French Revolution, and I think for a number of reasons that's not particularly strong in its argument. However, it's certainly true to say that they don't really help matters, and when there's a crisis on, Louis XVI is probably not the man that you want to be king. So let's start with him. He is, sometimes the books say that he was unprepared to be king because his brother had been born as the eldest son and heir of his father. Now that is true, but his brother died in 1761. In fact, 4 years before Louis XVI's father died. Louis XVI's father died in 1765, 9 years before Louis actually became king. So there was plenty of time to get ready for it, even if it might have been traumatic losing both your brother and then your father before you're even an adult yourself. Louis XVI's mother also died in 1767, so he's certainly quite an isolated figure when he became king in 1774. That was when his grandfather died as well. In terms of character, he's also often portrayed as being indecisive and weak-willed, and I think both those things are true, and kind of easy to manipulate. He's seen as being someone who believes the last person, or is persuaded by the last person that they spoke to, and this creates trouble, of course, for Marie Antoinette as well. But there are good things about Louis XVI. He was kind of in favour of modernising and an excellent memory. He was quite committed to his subjects and to France as a whole. As we'll see later on in the Revolution, he's also quite a principled man and a religious man too. His only trip when he was king outside of Paris and Versailles was to Cherbourg, where he went to look at the creation of a revolutionary new harbour. They were trying to, ever since the 7 Years' War, in fact, they were trying to build up the French Navy so they could compete on a global scale with the Royal Navy of Britain. And in Cherbourg, they were creating a harbour to try and facilitate that. They were sinking these sort of great wooden, sort of like cubes, fir cone type constructions into the shallow waters around Cherbourg, filling them with stones so that they would sink, but jut out the water and create an artificial sea wall. The whole idea was very innovative and revolutionary in an industrial kind of way, and completely hopeless. It didn't work at all. The sea broke up the way it did. Nevertheless, Louis was excited about this modern kind of idea and was keen to get behind it. He had an excellent memory and a good eye for detail. You know, his locksmithing hobby was kind of mocked and maligned, but it also demonstrates that he kind of perhaps was there in line with the philosophers who said, you know, living a simple life, particularly Rousseau. So living a simple life is something to be enjoyed and celebrated. Same, of course, could also be true of Marie Antoinette, who has that kind of ridiculous model, almost sort of Disney-fied farm in the grounds of Versailles, where she would go and pretend to be a peasant girl. And partly that is a reflection of her engagement with the Enlightenment and the philosophers as well. Marie Antoinette had much bigger problems on her hands, though. It shouldn't be forgotten that she's from Austria, and that was tricky to start with because Austria and France are traditionally enemies, and the marriage of Louis and Marie Antoinette was meant to bring them together, but of course she was always treated with a bit of suspicion as an outsider and a foreigner. She got married very young. She was married at 15. She became queen at 19. Louis was 20. So she's maybe a bit of slack should be cut her in those early days. She's quite bored by living in a foreign country with all these kind of rituals and processions to go through. And perhaps, not surprisingly, she kind of got caught up in card games and gambling as a way to pass the time and entertain herself. And from that, she acquires substantial debts and gets her nickname of Madame Deficit, which is, again, you know, not a very good reputation to have. She also develops this reputation for being something of a socialite, a party girl who goes out on the town with her mates. And again, that's perhaps understandable that Louis XVI wasn't that keen on that sort of thing. So she goes out not on her own, but with a small group of people. But that, coupled with the failure to provide an heir for 7 years, meant that she gets this sort of slightly scandalised reputation. Now, not getting an heir, of course, as you'll know, was Louis XVI's fault, but mud sticks, and Marie Antoinette had plenty thrown at her. Two stories kind of illustrate this quite nicely, I think. They're both from 1785, in a few years before the Revolution. Now, by that stage, Louis and Marie Antoinette already had 3 kids, and a 4th was to come before the Revolution. And Marie Antoinette was trying to rein in her spending and her public appearances because of all the criticism. But these two incidents sort of show that her reputation was already quite dicey. The first one is that in 1785, Austria proposed widening the mouth of the Scheldt in the Austrian Netherlands, so they could improve the ports of Ostend and Antwerp. The details don't really matter, but the point is that France and the Dutch Republic both opposed this move because they thought it would help Austria. And tension is raised quite a lot between France and Austria over it. Marie Antoinette, of course, intervenes with Louis to try and calm things down and to put across the Austrian perspective, for which she gets no thanks at all for avoiding a dicey situation. She gets lots of abuse for being the mouthpiece of Austria in the royal court. The second incident is probably even worse and shows how opinions of Marie Antoinette were already set against her, and that is the notorious diamond necklace affair. This was created when a hideous and huge necklace made of diamonds was created, and then the jeweller couldn't sell it. Jean de la Motte, a woman, conned this Cardinal de Rohan into buying it by making him think that he was buying it for Marie Antoinette. In fact, there's even a sort of farcical scene where Jean de la Motte meets Cardinal de Rohan in a garden and says, "Oh, look over there, there's the Queen," and she's had someone dress up as the Queen, and this girl waves at the Cardinal, and he's like, "Oh, the Queen loves me." Off he goes and buys the necklace, gives it to Jean de la Motte to give to the Queen. Of course, she runs away with it, tries to escape with the cash. They're all caught. The important thing to remember, the diamond necklace affair doesn't involve Marie Antoinette at all, and yet, when the whole thing comes to trial, public sympathy somehow gets kind of on the side of the criminals, and worse than that, Marie Antoinette herself has her reputation besmirched because people start thinking, yeah, I bet Marie Antoinette was part of this. This is the sort of thing she would do. I bet she does like the diamond necklace, even though she wasn't anything to do with it. So by the time we reach the French Revolution, it's clear that, firstly, Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI are not a king and queen who are strong enough to stand up to forces of a revolutionary nature. Secondly, that their reputation is not great. They are not going to be able to lead people through a time of crisis and doubt. But thirdly, it should be remembered that even in the early years of the French Revolution, people are quite prepared to give it a go sticking with them. And so for that reason, if nothing else, I think they're not to blame for the French Revolution. Thanks very much. See you next time.